everyone, I'm Tammye McDuff with These Curious Times, and we're here at the David Oman house, and we have been lucky enough to preview his movie, House at the End of the Drive. David?
Thank you very much for coming tonight and watching the movie, Tammye. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Now, you had given me a book.
Yes. Ghosts of Cielo Drive.
Yes.
Based on my experiences living here and the house, and of course the experiences of others dealing with the paranormal activity that's been happening here for the past 17 years now.
But you wrote the screenplay before you wrote the book, which is a little unusual.
Yes, I wrote the screenplay in 2004, and I started the book in 2005 and finally finished it 15 years later, last year.
Okay. And tell me the things that you did in the movie that actually happened. I know you took some
literary license.
Yes. Yes, you did. So tell me some of the things that have actually happened in the house.
As far as what you saw in the feature film, some of the things that were true were, for instance, my Rhodesian Ridgeback Sebastian, who's in the film, he used to bellow at the front door. And the reason why I got a Ridgeback is because I didn't want a dog that was a yappy, yappy, bark, bark dog. And Ridgebacks generally do not bark unless there's a threat to their home territory. As you saw in the movie, he used to bellow at the front door as if somebody was there. And I'd have to say, 8 out of 10 times, there was no one ever there. And it was uncanny. And we also had knocks at the front door, and we'd go open the door and go, hello? No one here? What the? The voices on the intercom that you heard, that you saw in the motion picture also is something that we've had happen here many, many times with voices, disembodied voices from parts of the house where no one was, the televisions weren't on, and it was strange as all hell, to say the least. Let's see, of course, the murders, the way that the murders were portrayed, with the exception of the names being changed. As you saw, there were 3 girls and a guy that committed the murders, and that was all very much true and accurate.
Did you actually have something happen as far as the electrical things going wrong? And
oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yes. I cannot tell you how many times things with the electronics in the house had acted up. Very, very, very peculiar things. Lights turning on in the middle of the night, televisions turning on, the computer just turning off on its own, people's cell phones turning on and turning off by themselves. Strange, strange things that we could not explain to make any sense of in this house when we started living. When I started to move in here and stuff was happening.
Now, there's a scene in the movie where you're talking with the contractor, and that actually did happen. Tell me about that.
Yes, the scene you're referring to was with my contract labor. 6 months before we were done construction, I asked my laborers if they had any strange experiences in the house. And one of the guys was in this room at 6 o'clock in the evening working. And
oh, this very room where we previewed the movie?
When Lance was talking about, and that storyline is told, or that's reprised by Lance Henriksen, stated that he was here at 6 o'clock. He was the last person here. It was midsummer. It was about 90 degrees. And he's in this room working. And he says he hears voices and footsteps coming from where this doorway is. But at the time when the house was constructed, this was all open. So it was 11 foot high by 8 foot wide at the landing at the staircase and the bottom of the staircase. And he says, I heard voices and footsteps. So I came from this room, went up the staircase to the top floor, and looked around the property and said, Senor Paul, Senor David, ¿dónde está? Nothing. So he went outside onto the street, looked up and down the driveway, and as he said, it was empty. And I said, well, I've been here at 7 o'clock in the summer to check on the property after everybody's gone, and the whole street's vacant. It's empty. And he said, yeah, that's the way it is. And I said, yeah, that's pretty standard. He goes, well, I come back downstairs and I start working again. 5 minutes later, coming down the staircase, he hears the sound of voices and people talking. And he goes, I don't understand. So I run upstairs again, and I look through the entire floor, and there's no one there. He says, that's it. I'm done. Because I'm going downstairs and pack my bag. So he came down the staircase, goes into this room, and he says all of a sudden, he starts hearing footsteps coming down the staircase. And at the time, there wasn't carpet. It was just the wooden planks, the treads going down the staircase. And he described them as leather-soled shoes hitting the treads. And they're getting louder and louder till they got to the bottom of the landing. And as I said, if you can imagine, it was wide open. And he got right into that door jam, and he's waiting there. There wasn't a door. It was just the opening. And he's waiting there with a hammer in hand. He says they got so loud, it sounded like they were right in front of him, right out here, and they stopped. So he came rushing out, and he stood right about there, about 6 feet from the landing. And he goes, he looks around and goes, there's nothing there. And he says, then it happens. I said, what happens? He says, this crazy sensation, this like ice, like a 2-inch wide piece of ice, comes whizzing across the back of his neck. He says, below his hairline and above his shoulder blades. And he goes, his whole body got frozen, just got totally, just covered with cold. And he got rigid. He says, the hairs of my body stood straight up. I got terrified. And I said, he started screaming, dos míos, yeah, my boy. It's translated from Spanish, means, I'm leaving, oh my God. It means, dos míos, means, oh my God, I'm leaving. And he ran up the stairs and took off, and he didn't come back for 6 weeks. And I said, wait a second, that's when you told the other guys you were taking care of your mother who was sick in San Salvador. And he goes, yeah. I said, I remember that because I was waiting for you to come back to put the tile in the master bathroom. And he goes, yeah? I said, yeah, and I got tired of waiting after the 3rd week. I said, where is he? And he goes, I don't know. He's going to be here, hopefully. And I said, screw this. I can't wait anymore. I got so impatient that I decided to take my hand and put it to work to put in the tile in the master bathroom.
Did you ever redo it, or?
No, I didn't redo it, but I'll just say to you, you can go through the entire house and the bathrooms and the kitchens and you'll see, oh, the tiles are great. I said, yeah. Come here, you don't believe my story? Go to the master bathroom. And what I watched him doing was take the piece of tile and he'd put on the paste and he'd slap it down. It was like, done. So I said, how difficult can this be? I've been watching you for the past 3.5 months putting the tile in every bloody room, every bathroom, in the kitchen. I can do that. I figured, what the hell? No. The guy had about 10 to 15 years experience doing this. And after I put the tiles in, I started to notice that, gee, one tile's a little taller than the other. And yeah, I know you got those spacers, but in some cases, you put one tile in, that's fine. You start putting in 20 tiles in, one's going to move a little, and the others are going to move. So at the end of the day, some of the tiles were closer to the other tiles, and some had a little of a lip. And I said, oh God, I spent all this time, and this bathroom looks like just crap. And so it's been there now 17 years, and I've left it. And I said, you know something? Better to leave it. Somebody doesn't believe the story. I go, come here. You don't believe my story? Look at the tile in this master bathroom. Do you think I would do something like this just to make a point? And they look and they go, yeah, the crown jewel of the house, the master bathroom's got a bit of a... I said, I know. Now you believe my story? And they go, yeah, it's kind of far-fetched for me to think that you'd fake that crap just to make a point. It's like, no.
Now, I know that one of the more famous people that you say are here is Sharon Tate.
Yes.
Now, but there are also other entities here as well.
Yeah, don't use the word entity. I hate to use that because in the public imagination and perception, it conjures a dark, foreboding type of a thing, entity. It's like, I think the first thing that pops into my mind is the Culver City case, which made the feature film called The Entity. And we have many spirits here.
Okay,
that
spirits.
Visit us. I'd say spirits. I don't even use the word ghosts, because again, that's kind of,
right.
Ooh. It's like, no, there's spirits. And it demythologizes and takes away a lot of that fearful power when you say spirits. When you say ghost, you're like, going, where? Where's there a ghost? What do you mean? And it's, so yes, there's many spirits here. Sharon?
Because this area has a really rich history of many different people going back to the 30s, I believe you said in your book, correct?
In the book, we went back to the 1840s when the Native Americans were still living here, and the Spaniards, well, at that time, it was part of Mexico, was still predominantly part of Southern California. That's where we are. This was all owned by the Mexican government. Okay. And apparently, in 1842, the Native Americans that were still here had been basically doing raids and excursions down to the woman whose rancho was down at Alpine and Sunset Boulevard. So on that, and I forgot what date it was, but I know it was sometime in 1842, they descended upon, I guess it was a scavenge party, went down to her adobe and her ranch and tried to make off with some of the sheep and livestock. Well, on this occasion, the ranch hands were so sick and tired of them basically filching their livestock, they took up arms against them, and there started a running battle that ended a mile away from here.
Well, what about the other spirits that, not back all the way to the 1800s,
right,
but in
oh,
the
you're
Hollywood
talking
era?
about,
yes.
You're talking about the Paul Byrne murder of Jean Harlow's husband,
mm-hmm, up
the street on, I forgot the name of the street as a matter of fact, but yeah, that was in 1932. Paul Byrne was a famous producer at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and his wife of 3 months, Jean Harlow, was living there with him, and he was killed. And there's the circumstances of his death have always been either it was suicide or it was a murder, but the true story was never really uncovered. He was actually found in his bathroom in the master bedroom, naked from head to toe, and apparently there was a suicide note where it said, "Sorry, honey, for the misunderstanding the night before." It was just a comedy of errors.
Oh, wow.
And his body was found there. That happens to be the house that 34 years later was rented by Jay Sebring. And Sharon and Jay were dating at the time, and mm-hmm, she was living in that house with him. And there's a story where in the middle of the night, Sharon woke up, Jay was still working at the studios, and she saw, as she described, a 5'4" naked man, as she recognized it as Paul Byrne's spirit, rifling through the roll-top desk, looking for something. And he turned and he looked at her, and she was in the bed, and then he turned back and he started rifling through the desk, trying to find something. She got up out of bed, walked to around the room to the door, went across the hallway to the top of the stairs, at which point she was looking down at the bottom of the stairs. And she described seeing the apparition of a blonde-haired woman who was tied to the banister, whose throat was cut from ear to ear.
Oh my.
She then proceeded to walk down the staircase, went around this apparition of this woman, went into the bar, and proceeded to make herself a drink. She then said that she started, picking at the wallpaper in one spot at the bar. Just a nervous tick, she started picking away and literally picked a nice little chunk of the wallpaper off, and then went upstairs and went to bed. The following morning, Jay was back, and he goes and wakes her up, and he says, "Hey, hon, what gives with the downstairs at the bar?" And she said, "What?" He took her downstairs to the bar, and at the spot that she had been the night before, which she had thought was a dream, where she was picking the wallpaper, there's a spot on the wall where the wallpaper was picked off, and it had never been picked before. And Jay was, what's this all about? And Sharon's like, "Oh my God, that means it wasn't a dream. It really happened."
Wow.
And that was the supposed premonition that Sharon had of her untimely death 3 years later, in 1969.
Interesting. Well, you heard it here. This is David Oman, and this is the Oman House, and there's some pretty interesting things going on here.